So welcome back to another episode of Reboot. And this is actually a lot sooner than I was planning on making a video, but I received a letter through that I really, in all honesty, wanted to share with you because I think it's beautiful on the subject of belonging, particularly as an expat when you've moved overseas. So I do have to take off for a few days, so this will be my last post this week, but I didn't want to hold back and not share this with you before I left. So as ever, thank you for tuning in and tuning into the channel, and for all your likes, your comments, and the subscribes to the channel. And if you have a story that you'd like to share, please feel free to share at the website, and I'll read it out on this channel. But I'll dive into this story, and it's quite a long one again, so you might want to pause halfway through to refill your coffee mug. So every now and again I get comments and letters that deeply touch me, and this was this was one letter, and it's what has prompted me to share it so quickly. And again, I'm reading from the laptop, so apologies if my eyes drop to the screen. But I think it's a beautiful story, and it raises so many questions. So here we go. Hey Ben, I don't know why I'm writing this. I guess because something you said a while back stuck with me, not in a dramatic way, but like a quiet echo. It had to do with belonging. Not the kind of belonging where people know your name or where your paperwork is in order, but the deeper kind. The kind that makes you feel seen without needing to perform. I've been living abroad for a few years now, Southeast Asia mostly, and there are days where I think, yes, I'm building something here, I'm rooted. I have habits, familiar faces, a life. But then there are days where I feel like a well-behaved tourist who forgot to go home. I wake up and realize I don't know if I'm a part of this place or just passing through with better lighting. It's not loneliness exactly, it's more a lack of anchor, a soft disorientation. I know the names of the streets, but not the subtext of conversations. I smile a lot and people smile back, but there's still a kind of barrier, not hostile, just impermeable. What makes it harder is that I genuinely love it here, and there's no reference at all to where the author is, but other than Southeast Asia. So again, what makes it harder is that I genuinely love it here. Not in a postcard way, in a quiet, committed way. I walk the same streets every morning. I greet the same neighbours. I eat the same breakfast most days. There is routine and even affection. But there is always a small part of me watching myself live here, like an observer who hasn't yet been fully invited to enter the scene. But these moments pass, and then I'm back in the quiet limbo between resident and outsider, between rooted and restless, between this is home and this is temporary. Sometimes I wonder if this is what it means to belong now, to belong provisionally, moment by moment, not as a permanent label, but as a shifting feeling. Something fragile, something earned and lost and earned again in 100 small interactions that don't make it into travel brochures. I wonder too whether this question, this entire emotional space, is just something most people don't talk about until it's too loud to ignore. There are so many YouTube channels, blogs, social media accounts, all selling the dream of relocation, reinvention, escape, but so few talk about the cost. Not the financial cost, but the subtle emotional erosion of always being slightly outside the story you're living in. I don't say this bitterly. In fact, I think there's a strange kind of beauty in it. There is a clarity that comes when you're not tethered to your old identity. A freedom in being the one who observes before reacting, the one who listens before speaking, the one who adapts not to be liked, but to honour the place you now exist within. Identity is strange like that. You don't really notice how tightly you're clinging to it until you're taken out of context. You think you know who you are, and then suddenly you're living in a place where your job title means nothing, your accent marks you instantly, and no one knows your backstory. You start again with fragments, and what's left, when you're no longer propped up by reputation or familiarity, is something quieter, something truer, sometimes not. And ego doesn't like that. Ego wants to be recognized, affirmed, respected. Ego wants to feel belonged to, but moving abroad humbles the ego. Or if not, it distorts it. You either let go of the need to be understood completely, or you end up constantly performing a version of yourself that you think will be accepted. I've done both, sometimes even in the same week. You begin to notice how much of what you used to think was you was actually your surroundings, reflecting back what you expected to see. Your job, your social role, your shared references, they reinforced a sense of identity without you needing to question it. Abroad, that scaffolding is gone, and what remains, well, some days it feels hollow. Other days it feels more honest than anything you've ever known. There's also the strange comfort of irrelevance, not being known, not being expected to behave a certain way. There's a freedom in that. But over time it can wear thin. We are relational creatures. We want to be seen, not just looked at, but seen. And in places where you're always slightly other, it's harder to know whether you're truly visible. Sometimes I catch myself performing nostalgia for a version of myself I didn't even like that much. The one who belonged by default. The one who didn't question so much. But when I sit with that, I realize what I'm really grieving isn't a place or a time or even a community. It's a version of myself that I didn't yet know how to be quiet with. A version that still believed longing meant being recognized rather than simply being. And then there are the places within me I didn't know existed until I lived outside of my comfort. Places that emerge not from comfort, but from displacement, from sitting with strangeness long enough for it to become a kind of strange intimacy. Not home, but something shaped like it, something made of fragments, of glances, of smells and quiet routines. What I'm trying to say is this: thank you for saying the kind of things that leave room for letters like mine. You don't rush to wrap things up. You don't pretend that being an expat is a solved puzzle. You leave gaps, and somehow that gives permission for me to do the same. I've never felt truly at home anywhere. Maybe that's a me thing. Maybe it's just what happens when you stretch yourself across too many borders. I used to envy people who had a strong sense of place. Now I'm not so sure. There's something quietly powerful about being able to feel almost at home in many places. It teaches you flexibility, it teaches you presence, and it teaches you that home isn't always a location. Sometimes it's just a moment of being understood. There's a tenderness that grows out of this way of living. You start to notice details others don't. You become fluent in quiet gestures. You learn to read between the lines, not because you're trying to assimilate, but because you're trying to honor the emotional texture of a place you've grown to care about. The world is loud about certainty. Everyone wants to be sure, to declare, to plant a flag. I've come to trust the ones who aren't so sure anymore. The ones who sit with ambiguity without needing to crush it into clarity. That's why I follow your work, not because it tells me what to think, but because it reminds me that thinking isn't always the point. Sometimes it's just about noticing. I don't know where I'll end up. Maybe I'll stay here, maybe I'll drift somewhere else, but I do know that this letter wouldn't have been written if someone hadn't first said out loud that belonging isn't always guaranteed. That sometimes it's just a feeling you pass through like the weather. So thanks for opening that door, for wondering out loud in a way that feels familiar, and for making it okay to not be fully at home anywhere, but still be fully alive. No reply needed, I just wanted you to know. Still wondering like you. And she signs off, a fellow expat, and that's why I said she, a woman, if that matters. So I hope you enjoyed that letter as much as I did. To be honest, she's articulated so well so many of the thoughts that I have on a daily basis around identity, ego, expat life, and how some days I can feel totally settled and totally grounded, and other days a little bit like I'm passing through. So as ever, I'd really appreciate your comments in the comments box below on whether you feel the same or if you disagree. So thank you very much for making it all the way to the end, and thank you.